He might be the most half-hearted ghost in the world. No fangs, no terrifying features, no overwhelming resentment. Just a white bedsheet draped over him, as simple as a child's Halloween costume. But even such a seemingly ridiculous figure has to start with a sad story. In the middle of the night, the old piano in the living room suddenly let out a loud bang. The man got up immediately, hurried downstairs to check, but found nothing out of the ordinary. Lately, his wife had been feeling inexplicably uneasy. She complained to him, saying that in the dead of night, she could always hear some unexplained noises. The worried look on his wife's face made the man's heart ache deeply. He promised that they would move in a few days, but neither of them expected that the very next day, the man would be in a car accident right in front of their home. There was no collapse as one might imagine, no hysterical crying, not even a single tear. She neatly pulled the white sheet back over her husband, turned, and walked away. No one knew how long it had been when the man suddenly sat up from the bed. He slowly walked out of the morgue. The hallway was bustling with people, but no one noticed him. Gradually, he came to accept the fact he had passed away. Just then, a door appeared before him, as if calling him toward another world to begin the next cycle of reincarnation. But because he could never let go of his wife, he ultimately gave up that chance to start over. He turned around without hesitation, followed the direction his wife had gone, and walked out of the hospital without looking back. Step by step, he made his way back to the home he had shared with his wife for 3 years. When he once again stood in the center of the living room, the house felt empty, eerily quiet. He just stood there, dazed, with no one knowing what he was thinking, perhaps not even himself. Before long, a sound came from outside the door. His wife opened the door. She wasn't collapsing, nor was she sobbing. Her entire being was wrapped in a suffocating silence. Expressionless, she stuffed the already cold food into her mouth, as if trying to swallow all her pain down into her stomach. In the end, she couldn't bear it any longer. All the man could do was stand at the bathroom door, helplessly watching it all. He could see every bit of her suffering, yet he couldn't offer a single shred of comfort. That night, his wife slept on the right side of the bed, and he lay in the spot that had always been his, because his sense still faintly lingered there. Days passed, one after another, and life had to go on. After a long and painful struggle, she seemed to have chosen to move forward. She replaced the double bed sheet they had once carefully picked out together, trying, in that way, to sever the last ties to the past. And all the man could do was, after she left the house, stay behind in that increasingly empty home, waiting for his wife to return. One day, as usual, he stood by the window, and to his surprise, he spotted, in the neighboring old house, another ghost just like him, draped in a bedsheet. That other ghost had waited for so long that he had long forgotten why he had started waiting in the first place. What kept him going now was no longer memory, but a lingering trace of obsession. Late that night, his wife came home, but this time, there was a strange man by her side. They kissed at the doorway, and all she could do was watch in silence. That unfamiliar presence, that blaring intimacy, finally ignited the anger that had been suppressed deep inside him. The lights in the room began to flicker wildly, and the books on the shelves seemed to be pushed over by an invisible hand, scattered all over the floor. The next day, his girlfriend came over to pick up the books from the floor. Between the pages of one book, 2 lines of text struck her eyes with startling clarity. This world does not stop turning just because someone is missing. Yet the one person she loved most had left her forever. In an instant, every little memory of him came flooding back. She put on her headphones, and the song they both loved began to play. The next day, she started packing her things, ready to leave this place that held too many memories, a place where she could barely breathe. All the man could do was stand there, watching helplessly, powerless, unable to hold her back. Before leaving, his wife took a small piece of paper and wrote something on it, no one knew what. Then she folded the note and tucked it into an old crack in the wall. After doing that, she painted over that section of the wall with fresh paint. It turned out that every time his wife moved before, she would leave a note like this in the old house. If one day in the future, she ever came back here, she could use that little note to retrieve those precious, irreplaceable memories. After his wife left, the already empty house became even more desolate. Day after day, year after year, the figure he missed most never appeared again. He began to develop an almost obsessive curiosity about the note his wife had left behind. He crouched down, clumsily picking at the crack in the wall. Just then, 2 children suddenly pushed open the door, their laughter and chatter shattering the long-standing silence of the house. It turned out that a single mother had moved in with her 2 children. They were the new owners of this place. Watching their warm, happy family eating dinner together, a wave of inexplicable jealousy surged within him. He grabbed every bowl in the cupboard and hurled them violently to the floor. The shattering of porcelain mixed with the children's screams. That family, terrified out of their wits by the horrifying scene, huddled together. The very next day, they fled the haunted house. The house fell silent once again. The man continued, tirelessly, to dig at that note. No one knew how much time had passed when a group of thrill-seeking young people barged into the place. They had long heard the rumors that this house was haunted, and had chosen it specifically for an adventure party, because in their view, the scariest thing in this world was never ghosts, it was time. There is no such thing as eternal love in this world, and no one is truly unforgettable. If you think otherwise, it just means enough time hasn't passed. Hearing those words, the man was utterly enraged. He refused to believe that he would ever forget his wife. The lights inside the house began to flicker wildly once more, sending the group of young people fleeing the place. Yet again, no one knew how long had passed. Spider webs had formed thick layers in the corners, and the wooden walls had slowly rotted and cracked. This place had gradually become become a haunted house forgotten by time. He still curled up in that corner, tirelessly picking at the note in the wall crack. A yellowed corner of that note had been pried loose from the brick gap, but just as he was about to pull the note out, the house came crashing down. Not long after, that little home that had held all his happiness and sorrow was leveled to the ground in the merciless roar of destruction. The house across the way had not escaped the disaster either. Two ghosts, forgotten by the world, gazed at each other from across the road, through the dust that filled the air. No sooner had that moment passed than the floral-patterned bedsheet was suddenly stripped away. All of its spiritual support vanished, dissipating completely from the world he had once clung to so desperately. And then, again, no one knew how much time went by. Above the ruins, skyscrapers rose from the ground, replacing the quiet that had once been there. Everything around him now felt utterly foreign, and that note he had clung to for nearly a century had long since disappeared without a trace. He finally decided to stop waiting. Dragging his faded white bedsheet behind him, he made his way up to the rooftop of the skyscraper. Without a moment's hesitation, he leaped off the edge. When he opened his eyes again, the towering buildings before him had all vanished, replaced instead by a patch of withered yellow grassland. A settler was driving wooden stakes into the ground with effort, getting ready to build his own home on this very spot. The man gradually realized that he might have traveled back in time, to an era far more distant than even his own existence. He watched that family perish in a sudden, violent uprising. He watched their bodies slowly turn into a pile of bones. He had no choice but to stand by as a silent observer, waiting. As time went on, the scene beneath his feet grew increasingly familiar. A young couple moved into that little house, and they were none other than his younger self and his wife. Everything unfolding before him were his most cherished memories until the night before the fatal accident. He knew he couldn't change the past, and his heart was filled with conflict and regret. He suddenly sat down at the piano and struck a loud chord, the very noise they had once heard. So it turned out that the source of all the haunting had always been himself. He had become the ghost in his own home, trapped in a time loop created by his own obsession. He guarded the house of memories, believing that was the entire meaning of his existence, never realizing that what truly imprisoned him was precisely this unwillingness to let go. He watched his other self go through everything he had once experienced. He watched his wife, once again, tuck that note into the crack in the wall, and then walk away without looking back. This time, he didn't waste a moment before the house could be crushed beneath the wheels of history. He pried the note free. When he finally read it, what it said no longer mattered. What mattered was that, after reaching the very end of time, he had finally chosen to let go. His obsession was resolved. His soul was freed. In that moment, time was no longer a cyclical cage. It became a door to freedom. Each of us carries a little note hidden in our hearts. It might be a regret, a missed chance, or a confession we never got to say. We guard it day after day, trapping ourselves, believing that's what it means to love deeply. But this film tells us that the real ending isn't about finding out what's written on the note. It's about having the courage to read it through, and then calmly, gently, let it go.